Okay, I think we're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another live Tech Strong Gang. No, we're not robots, but they seem to be everywhere. Mike, John Swartz, Teri Robinson, it's great to have you here live on the gang today. We're happy to be continuing this live TV experiment. I feel like we're all mice in the lab here, but hopefully it'll work. This is the first time we're trying it with a lot of people remote. I'm not in studio today. John is out in Las Vegas at CES. Teri's still in front of the brick wall. I don't think it's St. Valentine's Day Massacre or something. But
I know.
And of course, Mike Vizard joins us. Mike, as I mentioned, John's out in CES. I think that's John on the screen here. It's not some new humanoid robot, but robots are everywhere.
It's true.
No, John's been eliminated. He's over in he's over there.
John is our man on the ground at CES this week. So it seems like from out here, at least, John, in New York, that robotics once again is like everywhere at CES. And I know that we talked a little bit about this yesterday with NVIDIA and what they were doing, and we were mainly talking about cars, which are kind of becoming like a new robot. But there was a lot of announcements that are related to robots. So what's your sense? Are the robots taking over?
They are. They're taking over our homes. They're taking over our manufacturing. They're taking over our roads. They're taking over our skies. They're taking over everything. They'll probably be taking our jobs pretty soon, so watch out. So there were a bunch of things. Last night, actually, I went to this Lenovo event, and there was just a ton of announcements, as you would expect. Jensen Huang was there. What a surprise. But one of the things they did that really got my attention, and I actually went to get a live demo of it, was this mule type of robot that carries heavy amounts of material at dangerous sites. And it's being used in China, and it'll be used in the US at energy related sites for inspections and moving cargo. That was pretty cool. It's also incredibly expensive. It's probably upwards of 200 grand. But if you can afford it, why not? There was also on the home level, there's something called Roborock, which has this vacuum cleaner. It's very mobile, very flexible. It got a lot of attention. Segway has lawnmowers. Again, these are expensive, like $2,500. But the idea is they do repetitive tasks, and maybe they use them on college campuses or large venues to take care of maintenance. As you mentioned, Mike, NVIDIA and the cars. It was ubiquitous, and it kind of made me think about, this is all about convenience if you can afford it, but it's also about eventually changing the way jobs are done, especially dangerous jobs or repetitive jobs or thankless jobs. And that kind of made me think about what that might mean for the labor force going forward. And it was a dystopian, to be honest. And while convenient and awesome and cool, like all the words they always use at CES, to me, it's also somewhat troubling on where we're headed as this stuff gets smarter and more ubiquitous.
Alan, over the break, you had some comments about where we were headed with AI and the fact that it was going to be in the physical world on an article that you posted. What is your sense of, are we from a society perspective ready for all this?
Space, the final frontier. We could wring our hands and clutch our pearls and talk about dystopian and unsettled. It's not going to stop it. Robots are coming. Robots are going to do a lot of physical labor, and not just donkey work, with all due respect, carrying heavy loads into mine shafts or something like that. I think you're going to have we already have robots that do surgery, right?
Yeah, right.
That's pretty delicate right there, pretty fine-tuned. You're going to have robots that do a lot of physical activity, a lot of physical jobs. Now, what does that mean for us, right? And it's funny, tomorrow on my Shimmy Says, the title is, what exactly are all these AI jobs anyway, right? Because that's the thing we're hearing. Every time someone, John, says what you say about, wow, it's discerning, that we're going to, lose all of these jobs. People say, oh, but AI is going to create a lot more jobs than it takes. Well, what exactly are those jobs? And I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. You're going to have to watch Shimmy Says tomorrow. But basically, someone has to work those robots.
Hey,
right?
That's a good point. You brought that up, Alan, because I'm during the demo last night on stage, there was this robot at the Lenovo event at the Sphere. I was watching off stage. There were two guys that were controlling the robots. And so those were, I guess, ostensibly jobs created for the robot, but they're highly specialized people. And these are really expensive robots that do the work of many people. So the math is kind of a little bit off kilter, but again, we'll see. I mean, I wonder what these jobs are too, by the way.
I think you're going to have mixed groups of workers, some of them being physical AI or robots or whatever you want to call them, mixed in with people, right? And I said space in the beginning because I came across an article, Mike, and that was in what I wrote about, where, a lot of the so-called architects of AI, right? The Times Men of the Year, are saying that space represents the next great place for jobs. And you could foresee like going to an asteroid and mining an asteroid for metal, where the robots are actually out on the surface of the asteroid, actually mining the metals and so forth. But there's humans at some control ship or some control outpost somewhere near that asteroid, if not on the asteroid, who kind of oversee all of this and schedule all this and communicate. So it won't be like a fully robotic mission. It'll be a joint effort of people.
I don't know what to think that is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was
just
just
wanted to say,
I
I've seen that movie, Alan, though, real quick, because, that's when they declare independence from Earth and then they set up a whole other country, right?
Well, no, first someone says, open the pod bay doors.
See,
Terry, what do you want to say?
I was just going to say, I don't know whether to think that's like super cool or super like scary and distressing for the reasons you just said, Mike, like when do they take over or turn on us? And, but also just to be, I don't know, in an outpost in space directing robots to do things also sounds a little like,
but
not
you look at it, I will tell you, over the break, I had the chance, a friend of mine's friend came down to spend some time with us. We were out on the boat. This gentleman works for Blue. Jeff Bezos, his space.
Blue Origin.
Blue Origin.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, he showed me videos, stuff that we don't really see publicly of stuff they're doing. And I am more convinced than ever that our children's children will work in space. And
so there's different.
Our generation thought we might work in space. I mean, you asked.
Yeah, well, we did go to the moon once.
Well, yeah, and then you ask if we're prepared for this or ready for this. Well, maybe heck yeah. If you watched the Jetsons when you were a kid, you thought that this is where the future was going to be, maybe a little bit sooner than than it is, right?
Well, here, Teri, I'm glad you said that, because this goes again. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow in my Shimmy Says. But here's a Shimel law for you. Shimmy Says law. The future never happens as fast as we think it will, until it does.
Until it does, suddenly it's there.
Right? Like we grew up, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to have the Jetsons, we're going to have the flying cars, and then we're going to have things like AI and quantum and robots doing all these things. And they always seem 3 to 5 years away, fusion energy, 3 to 5 years away. And then all of a sudden it's here. And we're not prepared.
Time out. Somebody already has that law. It's called, the future's already here and it's just unevenly distributed. So that already exists.
So I got a copyright claim already.
But I want to come back to like Earth here. Space is nice, but let's talk about something near in the near term. I think that, having a robot that's going to go in and put out a fire so I don't have to send the fire department in there is priceless. That's 250 grand, no problem. Having a robot that, eliminates somebody's job that is, making 60 grand a year, but the robot costs $200,000 to $300,000 a year. I'm not sure that math works. So
the robot doesn't cost 200 to 300 grand a year. The robot,
Well,
the
price will drop. So I was just anecdotally this morning. I was waiting in line for the Starbucks to open at 5:30, and I was behind a lady who works for Caterpillar. So I started talking to her because I did an interview with the CTA people, the people who run this organization, this show, Gary Shapiro, and they were mentioning agriculture, and I asked her about the impact on the jobs. And I said, this is going to be really interesting, but like in manufacturing, are we going to see a decline in people working in the fields or people gathering? And she said, well, it'll shift. And I was like, well, to what? And she just smiled. So I'm sure they have a plan, but that always worries me.
mhm.
I mean, look,
Yeah.
this will bleed into our next section.
Well, so
here
John,
in a
are they
second.
talking security at all there? Are they talking security at all there? Because robots.
They did. Actually, they did. So,
Data and-
we can talk about it. Yeah, they talked about security. They talked about green and the environment and energy consumption, which I think we're going to maybe talking about later. I'll bring that up later.
And they
but-
weren't
but
deported on the spot.
It was, well, they're very touchy about this. Lenovo and NVIDIA in particular kept going over, this will save energy costs. This will minimize the amount that's necessary to make this all happen. Red flag.
Yeah. So let me return to what Mike's saying though. So guys, you got to trust the market. You've got to trust the market. No sane business owner is going to pay 200 grand a year for a robot to do the job that a 50K a year worker does just to be cool. Right? This reminds me, my son was accepted to the Kelly School at Indiana University. I went with him to accepted students day, and I got into a beef with an economics professor there because he said that well, what do you expect from Indiana? But he said that the minimum wage creates artificial jobs, right? It gets in the way of progress. And that, they're just giving people, in essence, busy work. And this goes back to the article I wrote. We don't want to create AI jobs that are busy work jobs, right? Because the market doesn't work that way. I don't need to create busy work jobs that are not economically viable. If I could get a machine to do that job faster, cheaper, better, I'm going to use the machine. The market's going to force me to. Otherwise, someone else will, and they'll put me out of business. Unless I'm going to get subsidies or something from the government for giving people work, give them a shovel and have them dig dams in the Tennessee Valley, right? I don't think we're going to come to that again, though.
So the only thing that really bothers me about this is if, say, you have a $200,000 robot, what if it does the job of, say, 7 to 8 people who make $40,000 a year? So the math is going to work to the advantage of those who can afford the robots and don't have to worry about benefits, for instance, and don't have to worry about somebody getting injured on site or lawsuits. So that's kind of where I see some of this headed. But that, as you said, Alan, let's let the market play itself out, and it's going to take several years. And I'm sure we always find our way with technology, I think.
There will be jobs we haven't thought of.
I wish we had a better plan, because I'm afraid that a lot of those people who are not going to be going to work and their identity is wrapped up in their job are going to decide that, they don't like the way the world is going, and they're going to vote in a way that might be suboptimal for a robotic future.
Well, yeah.
Welcome to today's U.S. Isn't this what happened in manufacturing in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early? Right? Isn't this why we find ourselves in the position we're in? Hillbilly elegy and all of this stuff, where you have vast swaths of the Rust Belt that have been made obsolete.
Right. Yeah, and you're taking away more than their jobs. It's like their dignity,
their identity,
everything. Yeah. So that's tough stuff.
I say send them to space.
Or underwater.
We
or
gotta-
Or they can go
underwater.
underwater,
No,
they
I
can
mean,
do
seriously,
that, like
this
with your
is going to
diesel.
be an issue.
Right.
You're going to have, and don't give me the retraining, because you're not going to get some 50-year-old beer guzzling dude in Fort Wayne, Indiana, to become a robotics engineer. It don't work like that. But hopefully his son will be, or his daughter will be, right? And there's going
Well,
to be a disruption and displacement of a generation.
see, and that's the
Yeah.
thing. I mean, oftentimes when it happened, look what happened like in Detroit, you know, when all those car jobs went away and assembly line, whatever. There was like a lost generation in there because, first of all, the people that had been doing it didn't support the younger people coming through because they couldn't see a pathway for them to be, you know, they couldn't carry on the family tradition of working on the line and, you know, whatever. And until Michigan was doing this kind of interesting thing, their economic development committee about training kids and helping kids in schools develop like cyber programs because cars had computers and cars had security issues and all of that. And it was finally the first time that an older generation could relate to the younger ones coming up and feel that connection. But that was a long time coming. That was decades. You
Look,
know.
Bruce Springsteen writes songs about this. So's Billy Joel, right?
Yeah, I want to hear what those songs are going to be going forward.
Yeah. We've got to move on to our B block, but it's
AI was going to write them.
Continuation. Yep. Guys, let's transition.
transition.
So here in our live version, we don't really take break. We transition. So we're going to transition into our B block, and we're going to talk, you know, in the same vein, data centers. The $8 trillion albatross around our necks that would, well, maybe it's not an albatross, but there's an $8 trillion price on our heads. And Mike, there's articles out here, right? Reports.
Yeah, let me walk through the fundamentals of the report from JLL, who's a commercial real estate company that specializes a lot in data centers deals. And they're saying that there'll be 200 gigawatts of data center capacity by 2030, which is a 14% compound annual increase, with about half of the workloads on those environments being AI driven. And they're also saying that things will bifurcate in two different directions. One is we'll see AI data centers for training move to areas where energy is super cheap. And then we'll also have data centers that are showing up closer to the internet connection point, because there'll be applications that are highly latency sensitive and we need the AI to run in real time. And they're saying that, you know, we're building out for this level of capacity and that most of that capacity is already committed for. However, they are also noting that getting funding for these projects is already starting to become difficult, because there are concerns that maybe we are starting to overbuild to the point where we're not going to see that level of return on investment. And we don't know what the future of AI looks like in terms of large models versus small models and how much capacity we may or may not need. So there's a lot of unknowns here. And Alan, I know you also wrote about the fact that people are investing in data centers and these things aren't creating a whole lot of new jobs either. So, you know, as you kind of look at the outlook from here, what's your assessment?
So my assessment is that 14% year over year growth is not enough to meet the $8 trillion number, quite frankly. I think that's actually a very conservative number to bring 200 gigawatts on by 2030, 4 years from now. You know, because we better make it up in the back half, because we got $8 trillion committed to these things. Now, that being said, it's still a pie in the sky number, because where the hell are you getting 200 gigawatts worth of energy to power these things? And enough water to cool them down, assuming that there's a market need for that kind of capacity. And even if there is, it's a bit of a letdown. Then you get into the whole Arvind Krishna argument, which is, that's great, but this is a flawed model that's not profitable. So what the hell are we doing? And then let me put one more stick on the camel's back. You're right, Mike. I did write about an article that I dug into, which was a I think it was $1.2 billion.
2.1.
$2.1 billion data center being built. And this was a multi-phase, let me be clear, multi-phase data center, 5 phases between now and like 2035, with 4 or 5 different huge buildings as part of this AI factory. And it was going to create, not counting the construction jobs. Yes, there'll be jobs constructing these things, but those are temporary and transient. Permanent jobs created in the data center, all of 37.
Yeah.
37. Now, yes, it'll generate a lot of property tax, though the locality, the municipality in the article you'll see is talking about a 70% tax abatement if they do this. So they're only going to collect 30% of the actual property taxes that are due there. What's it going to cost people living there in increased energy expenses? We don't know. But for 37 jobs, unless we're going to take all that property tax and pay it out to people in some kind of basic income, whatever they call that, right? Basic income, everyone will get on the dole and on the government, and we could all sit home, drink Ironhead beer, watch football and T-shirts or something. What exactly are we? What is this the future we want? Is this this ain't Star Trek?
No, but I think a lot of these things are also popping up in economies or regions that are desperate for something, right? I present to you my home state of Louisiana, water-soaked, oil and gas-soaked Louisiana, which they have high hopes for data centers there, right? And so Meta's got their big one in the northern eastern corner of the state. But now in my the town where I grew up, Shreveport, Louisiana, they're just wanting to build a data center, in town, basically. And the planning commission nixed it, as did the citizens, but the city council just overruled them toward the end of last year. And that was the big discussion. What are the resources that are going to be taken? What's the yield for us? I mean, this is an indiscriminate data center. Nobody knows what it might, who might attach themselves to it. But, there's I think an estimate there that it would be no more than like 100 jobs.
Yeah, no, they're not labeled. These data centers are not.
Can I make this
Sure.
political? Because I think this is all really politically tinged, and I also think it's part of this tech bro mandate or dream. So they want and they promise to spend billions of dollars on these facilities,
Trillions,
and trillions, right? And the White House says, "Oh, we're manufacturing in the U.S. We're going to build in the U.S. We're going to bring jobs back to the U.S." There's a total disconnect, but just based on what you found out, Alan, and what Teri just mentioned, there are going to be a lot of these facilities not employing very many people, and who's going to benefit most are the tech companies that are using or
and I'll tell you who else is going to benefit.
They're passing the cost along.
John, so, it's a real estate play, and look who's the president.
And absolutely, this is
when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
And I don't mean to be the guy who to stir the pot, but this really does piss me off.
Yeah. Wait, time, Teri. Will the citizens of your hometown vote out the city council over this issue? Even
no,
not in Louisiana,
not, because they consistently vote against themselves, on just about everything. So the city council will probably stay right in place. Maybe they'll lose one seat or something. But it's there's all this hope. It's a depressed place. That city. When you look at it, growing up, it had 250,000 people. It's like about 180 now, or maybe less. There's just been a flight out, even kind of starting with my generation, of leaving town and going to Dallas or going to New Orleans or going someplace else where there's more economic opportunity. So I think people are pinning their hopes on this because there's some desperation there. And it's also, it lives and dies on oil and gas. It's in the middle of the Haynesville Shale. It lives and dies.
You mentioned Meta and its facility in Louisiana. That made me think back to a couple of years ago when I was in Kansas City, and in the outskirts of the airports, which is a pretty desolate area, honestly. Meta was building a major data center, And this was the hope and dreams of everyone. Oh, this is going to make us a tech center. And when I see this, it just happens time and again.
So but that's the fallacy of the data center dream. It doesn't make you a tech center because, quite frankly, where a data center is located really has nothing to do with the jobs that technology is enabling and empowering. Because
I will say one thing about the Shreveport area, and this is maybe the only thing that could help change for good for them, is Barksdale Air Force Base. The SAC command is right there. That's a very important base, and it's they've developed a highly technical, staff and whatever, and a
look, there is no doubt that military bases are hub zones, are development zones, right? Supporting the base, supporting the soldiers there.
How much is that going to be? How much does that really yield for the overall community?
But that's not the data set. Here's the problem. Our economy and so much of, Mike, that's why the study you cited to start this whole conversation from the real estate firm, to me, it's suspect because it's a real estate firm. They think of jobs as construction workers. I've got carpenters, electricians, concrete folks, HVAC people, and it's going to take us 3 years to build this billion-dollar colossus, and we're going to invest $1 billion in the real estate and the building of it. We're going to have a shiny building, and so much of America, so much wealth, not just the current occupant of the White House, so much wealth in America has been created by real estate. You know what they say? Buy land, God's not making it anymore, right? And so we are geared towards real estate deals like this, right? And that's why you see people like Trump and Kushner and these real estate folks. This is something they understand. They may not know jack squat about AI and GPUs and what Jensen's talking about, but they know about real estate and construction. And that to them is the grail, not the jobs that are going to be there once the construction's done.
Right. And if we don't wind up using the data center, there's money to be made in tearing it down. But I also think the locals are locals are not counting on the fact that if you talk to folks in Virginia, they'll tell you about this. Is data centers are damn loud, and suddenly that is not just some quiet building sitting on the corner. This thing is starting to hum in your ear every day, and it becomes part of your life.
But Mike, we're a country that accepted black lung disease for people to go and work steel mines or iron mines.
Well, and we're going back to that. I mean, we're reduced. The regulation is.
They don't care. I think what they will care about is when their electric bill goes up. Then they'll.
So that's interesting because it's CES. That's an undercurrent. These companies are trying to get ahead of that argument about in terms of energy usage. So Lenovo is going overboard. And then at the NVIDIA events, so I'm trying to figure out the password is for the Wi-Fi at the event, and the event's password is green. Fill in the blanks, and it's just this. They started a corporate blog about how they're environmentally conscious and how they're responsible citizens. So that's part of selling the dream.
I think Meta's going to decide that paying the electric bill for all the locals in Shreveport or wherever the hell it is around the era. So they're going to make that issue go away.
Yeah, well, I didn't get to read the article, but I sort of bookmarked it someplace. There's a huge thing out just a few days ago on Memphis, right? Because there's that data center that's like in Memphis or right in that area or whatever, and the quality of life issues, like the quality of life and the problems that residents have been having. I think noise was one of them, Alan. It just, people just don't think. But I was actually encouraged. I've been on a couple of threads online with different groups in Shreveport, and there are a lot of knowledgeable people who, we're kind of saying, we got to think about the noise thing. We got to think about how much, we're footing the bill for the power. Where's the water going to come from? Yes, Louisiana is soaked with water, but that doesn't necessarily translate into the resources that a data center needs to, function. So anyway, a more robust discussion than I thought, but people have gotten fairly astute down there on some things because that's Mike Johnson's district and they've had to pay attention to what's yeah.
The one thing that I really like about AI, the one thing that the undercurrent I really like about the whole topic about AI is people are more engaged with this technology than any other technology I've ever come across. They have an active curiosity about how it's going to impact them, and they're actually doing some of their own research to see what the repercussions are going to be because it's so inevitable. So it to me, it's encouraging actually that people are looking into the impact in line.
I think AI is a technology people love to hate. I think people are distrustful of it. They see it coming.
They want to learn about
and so they want to know, but they don't like it.
They don't like. The more they read, the more they learn, the less they perhaps.
And they're duped by it all the time. I mean,
yeah.
We'll see. Hey, we've got to transition once again. I got to come up with a better word than transition, but we need to move along here to our C block, and we're not going to talk about robots and jobs being taken. We're actually maybe going to talk about some new cybersecurity jobs. We're always talking about new the mythological cybersecurity jobs gap, right, between skills and jobs. But Mike, we've got a new article out on this, yeah?
Yeah, Teri wrote this based on a report from, I think it's KPMG, right?
Yeah.
And they're forecasting that we'll see a significant increase in cybersecurity spending in 2026. And this comes off a year where a lot of people pulled in their horns because they were uncertain about the economy, but maybe the economy is not as bad as people thought because, we don't know, or in certain segments it's better than other places. But whatever the driver is, it also seems like the nature of the battle is changing, Teri. And we got to invest to keep up the fight because the bad guys are changing their tactics.
Well, yeah. And I'm just going to, I'm not going to throw a lot of water on this, but just going to harken back to something that Alan said about the future, that, it's slow in coming until it finally does, right? It just, we think it's going to, I think that's the same thing with like cybersecurity budgets. We start saying, they're getting bigger until they don't, right? Or until they cut back. So I don't want to be too pie in the sky about, the results of this study, but yes, it's the KPMG cybersecurity survey for 2025. And, I think their overall message here so more than half of the people surveyed said their budgets were going to increase between 6 and 10%, which is, pretty significant stuff. But I think the overall, analysis by KPMG on this was that maybe security, like zooming up like this or going up like this, is going to point to this sort of boom that's happening, that people and organizations are finally seeing cybersecurity as fundamental to business, or an accelerator for business, and not just a cost center, which we've been talking about forever, and key to innovation, reducing risk and all of that. These are all topics that I think we discuss quite regularly.
I've been in security a long time, Teri.
Mm-hmm.
And like spring follows winter and summer follows spring, and these are the days of our lives. Every year, about 2 to 3 months before RSA, we start seeing the surveys come out, and lo and behold, security is the top priority. It is number one, top of the heap. We are putting our budgets in. I can't wait to buy the latest technology because the bad guys have gotten smarter, but we're catching up. And la-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. And then sometimes right after RSA, right before Black Hat, we start hearing how we're losing the battle. We've had more breaches this year than last year, and historically high, and the cost per breach is terrible. And it's the same old, and our corporate fat cats still have T-Rex arms that don't reach their pockets. and those budget money never gets spent.
Well,
So,
that's yeah. So
I
that's
could have wrote this for them and saved them a couple of dollars. I could have had some robots do it cheap.
well, yes. And I mean, that's what I mean. It's like you get these kind of, oh, this real positive thing, but then suddenly the reality is not, it doesn't bear out. Right. But I think part of what was interesting about this is there's a lot of effort going into resilience, and then not surprisingly, our old buddy AI is driving so much of the security concerns and so much of the pitch for dollars. And they have some traction now within, maybe because of what we were talking about. People are doing their research. They, are interested, they're AI curious, right? But they also are AI averse, and they're worried about what it's going to mean for security. And so they're appropriately putting money toward that, but how it actually gets used in the future, or if it gets used, or if it makes a real difference, those are other questions altogether. I don't,
Agreed. I think the other thing, one of the cycles I've seen in security over the years is, let's call it the innovation cycle, right? We have years where, you get the VCs wringing their hands or lamenting, oh, there's no innovation in security. We don't see anything new. It's the same old, same old. It didn't work before. What makes you think it's going to work now? And then they're looking for innovation, and then someone comes up with a next gen firewall, or a next gen this, or a future proof that. And all of a sudden innovation springs like flowers, crocuses in the spring. AI is that innovation point for the security industry, whether it's using security to make our AI more secure, right? So let's secure AI generated code. That's innovation. Even though, what's the difference between securing AI generated code and human generated code? All code is code. It's the same technology, but we're going to slap let's secure AI generated code security tool on it, and ooh, I've got innovation, and everyone gets excited, and I'll open up my budget a bit. So it's securing against AI. Or the other fact pattern you're going to see is, I'm using AI to make us more secure, right? Here's my innovation. What we were using before was not AI enabled, so it sucked. But now I've got AI, and it's going to be a lot more better at securing your code, or securing your infrastructure, or securing your insider threats, or what have you. And so AI itself, the fact that it's AI enabled, represents the innovation. Right. Either one of those fact patterns are enough to get corporate boards to write checks, because they see innovation. It's like in politics, people always vote for change. In security, they vote for innovation.
Right. And that's, I think, one thing that this study, if you dive deep into it, sort of touches on, and the people that I talk to, is that idea of innovation, and that idea of security cutting across business rather than just being confined to the security question itself, right? It allows for innovation. It allows for risk reduction, so supposedly. But if you think it's going to create more jobs because these budgets have gotten bigger.
Let's send them to Shreveport, baby.
But I would say I'm hopeful on the following points, right? I think that AI will significantly reduce the time to investigate security incidents. And I think we waste an inordinate amount of time doing that. And so I'm hopeful that the job itself will become a little more enjoyable, and maybe I'll even be more successful, simply because, I can ask an AI, what is the probability of the root cause of this thing? And it'll come back to me in something in natural language. I may not take that as gospel, but at the very least, I'm like a little further down the road to figuring out what went wrong with this thing. Right. And then secondarily, I think that, security people, if you talk to them, they are burnt out. And a lot of them are tired of, running through those data analytics exercises. And if we can shorten that and reduce that, maybe the whole job becomes more enjoyable. I don't think AI is going to replace the need for security people anytime soon, but I think that there's a lot to be said for spending some money to make that task A, more successful, and B, less tedious.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think you're right about that, and I don't think it's going to replace in the near term, but there is a prevailing sentiment that they're not these bigger budgets aren't going to translate into additional jobs, right? You might not be cutting jobs with AI, but the additional jobs, it's just going to let you use your same small team, and it's going to scale because you've got the dollars and you've got AI and whatever.
It's going to eliminate jobs that never existed because we had all these open positions that nobody fulfilled anyway.
Nobody fulfilled. Yeah, what was it? The 3 million, whatever. Yeah.
So maybe, the annual story about how there's 3 million open positions in cybersecurity will go away, but
never.
There seem to be a lot of these circular narratives in cybersecurity, right?
Yeah, no,
like
yeah.
Year
When
after
you hear,
year,
when
I mean,
you
it's an insane, process.
Right.
It is. It when you hear long enough and you recognize the patterns, and especially when you could map them to RSA and Black Hat. There's definitely a cycle that's controlled by those two shows. There's a cycle of security reports, news, product release, etc.
Yeah. Now, that said, right, we talk about all those open positions, and this is an example of one, but there's a kid over here in Westchester who's got a master's in cybersecurity who's tending bar because he can't find a job in the space. So
because he's got his degree, but he never got experience.
That may be what it is, but so breaking into the field is still not easy.
No. That hasn't changed, and that's the biggest thing I hear from people. All these kids who actually took cybersecurity in school. When I came up, no one took cybersecurity in school.
Well, what's cybersecurity?
Or InfoSec. There was no.
I know. Well, so maybe
even on a broader scale, though, I'm sorry, Teri, but even on a broader scale, not just cybersecurity, any type of people coming out of college are going to be facing the same reality. There are a lot of studies showing that right now. It's our job. The job market entry level is really hard.
It's a difficult market. And I remember a few years back, they even talked about in law firms how, kids are coming out of college. And I know, Alan, you and I both had kids that passed the bar this year or last year and, or whatever onto their careers. But they were talking about just the practical things that they couldn't do, that now these law firms were having to hold sessions to train kids. So it makes me wonder in the area of security and given how hard it is to get in, if there's better ways to coordinate between states and the federal government and businesses and colleges and universities to have a pipeline that's stronger. So you're not just, you don't just shoot out of the university and then, oh my God.
I think it goes to are these programs, cybersecurity, for instance, preparing people for the real world, for the real job. That's why I like programs like Northeastern University that has their co-op program, where they actually help you get a job while you're still in school, and you 6 months of your school you're working, and then 6 months you're in school, and 6 months you're working in school. We need more programs like that, I think, than having some poor guy get a friggin' master's degree in cybersecurity.
Right. Well, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier in Detroit about the car thing. I mean, the Economic Development Commission there did a really good thing about engaging junior high and high schools, and then engaging universities and the car companies. So these kids would sometimes know as far back as, their freshman year in high school, that there was a pathway for them and a job waiting for them when they got out of university if they stayed sort of on this track, because everybody was on board and they built a strong pipeline. Now, I don't know what's happened to it in the meantime, because I looked into that several years back and, pre-pandemic. So I don't know what ultimately happened there, but they were really trying to build that strong pipeline and make it practical for kids. Like they're working on cyber projects while they were in high school and actually getting hands-on experience, high school, college, and then into the real world.
So what impact do you think AI will have on all that? Because I hear from a lot of the seasoned people in security or even DevOps or whatever, that they're saying that, well, I'm using AI now instead of some junior kid to take care of a task. And so there's fewer entry level positions by definition.
Well, right. And then, of course, that creates a gap too, doesn't it, in the pipeline further down, because you don't have people that have had this hands-on training or apprenticeships or whatever they do. You skipped that.
Either that, or we need to change the education system so that the people who are coming out of the schools are not as junior as they are today.
Well, that's right. And that's why I think that's a collaboration between business, government, and education. I think that's
in California. In California, they're trying to do that. Newsom has tried to do this, where he's kind of integrating the government and the education system to better prepare students for AI. And I think it goes back to STEM, and I think AI in a sense accelerates this. But again, these things are good in concept, but in reality, you actually do need a practical education. You need hands-on training, especially when you're in college.
Right. Mm-hmm. But that's it. If it's done right, you get that too, don't you? The universities work and the government works with business, and you get that hands-on training all the way down the line. But I don't know, I don't see a lot of states committing to that at this point in time, but
I don't know if it's the state's responsibility. I think it's the school's responsibility to prepare their students for jobs. I think it's the students' responsibility. I think it's the market at play. I think industry has to tell universities.
Well, yeah, in California though, it's just because it's such a vested interest though in terms of the tech education, that try to keep the jobs within the state or keep the companies here. I think it's purely motivated by that, and the educators have to. My wife's a teacher, so it's a frustrating process, and given how. I won't get into the politics in the education system, but things move slowly, grind slowly.
God, everywhere.
Right. But back in the day, you used to become if you wanted a job in a space, you basically were a junior apprentice for 3 or 5 or 4 years before you actually got to be a full-time employee or whatever it was. So maybe we're going back to the future. I don't know.
Yeah, there was also the.
That's where I came into this conversation. Yeah. But that's where I got to end this conversation.
The first Trump administration, there was an apprentice program that was much ballyhooed that Mark Benioff talked about, and where did that go?
You're fired.
The apprentice, right. You're fired. You're done.
Trump and the apprentice, yeah. All right. Hey, we're over time though. We got to end this live. Tech Strong Gang. We hope you've enjoyed it. Hey, appreciate the comment on LinkedIn from Mr. Singh. I always appreciate all comments. We'll try to incorporate them as we go forward. But we're out for now. We've got Tech Strong TV coming up behind this. And Teri, John, Mike, thanks for joining. John, enjoy the rest of your Vegas trip there. Teri,
I'm leaving soon.
Okay. Well,
I'm getting the hell out of here. Yeah.
Well, you put your time into Vegas.
You got your 3-day limit on Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, I hit the 72 hours, Mike. I'm done.
I get it. Yeah. But until next time, this is Alan Shimel for the gang. We're out. We hope everyone's enjoyed it.
Thank you.